So I guess the first step kind of began right out there during the attack. I was lucky that it was a wild animal. It wasn't something that was done to me by a person or it wasn't something that I could really control. But being mauled was kind of like a complete feeling of loss of control. And the feeling of loss of control is a feeling of vulnerability. I could choose to be a victim. I could let this rule and ruin my life. I could choose to make it tragic, or I could kind of choose to take control of the situation and allow it to be part of my life. So just like any other kind of event that happens, it just becomes a little bit of who you are, but it doesn't really define you.
This is Mission Ready, presented by WBM Technologies.
Welcome to Mission Ready. This is episode 6 of a deep dive into A Mission by Stars. We're a non-profit healthcare organization that provides pre-hospital critical care from 6 bases throughout Western Canada. I'm Deborah Tetley.
And I'm Lyle Aspinall. In this final episode of our first season of Mission Ready, we've done something a bit different from what you've heard so far. We're sharing with you an inspiring conversation we recently had with Marcia Burkett, the very important patient at the heart of this season's storyline. Many years have passed since she was mauled by a cougar in a remote wilderness and cared for by stars, and she's learned so much about herself throughout that healing journey. Now stay with us, you're going to learn how she took control of her situation and the coping techniques she used. But more than that, she'll talk about the strength she found through it all. So with that, let's jump right in. A conversation with Marcia Burkett.
So thank you so much, Marcy, for joining us today. We're so happy to have you. We've been following your journey through the eyes of all the people who were there for you that day. And we just wanted to touch base with you and see how you're doing now.
Well, right now I'm doing great. We have a 6-day-old son right now that is hanging out with me here, and a 5-year-old daughter. And we no longer live in Grand Prairie, but we've moved to Calgary for Josh's work.
So I remember shortly after this incident happened with you, I was driving to Lethbridge with Josh for a lottery launch. So we had lots of hours in the car together. And we talked a little bit about what happened with the cougar attack in Grand Prairie that day. And I said, would she be interested in sharing her story? And he said, absolutely not. So obviously that's changed. And of course I respected that. I never asked him again. And obviously that's changed. There's a lot of years separating. But what else has changed since that time? Maybe just talk a little bit about your healing journey.
Yeah, life is pretty much back to normal. I guess I have a new appreciation of cougars, but otherwise, we still do everything that we love to do. Still go camping and hiking. I no longer work for the government. After I had my daughter, I decided to not go back to work and spend time with her.
You know, most of us, I guess I can only speak for myself. If I was in a situation that you faced, it would be a struggle to come back to a place of normalcy, and for you to be back to, like you said, being back to normal. Obviously, some steps were taken in the intervening years to get back to that point. What were those steps?
Um, so I guess the first step kind of began right out there during the attack. I was lucky that it was a wild animal. It wasn't something that was done to me by a person or it wasn't something that I could really control. But being mauled was kind of like a complete feeling of loss of control. And the feeling of loss of control is a feeling of vulnerability. I've always been lucky and had a lot of control over my life. And when you're put into a moment where you can't control what's happening, you're trying to fight, but it's not working out. I kind of found that my mind had to gain some type of control. So in that case, it was like internal control. So I'm just living through the last 30 years of my life and picking out pertinent information and applying it to the attack kind of made me feel like I still had some level of control. After my coworkers kicked the cougar off my back and saved me, they started doing first aid. And again, a way of kind of gaining control when I lost it was I became very bossy and trying to boss them around and tell them what to do or trying to take my own vitals to see how I was doing. They were just kind of little things that I guess the mind kind of went to try and bring back that, no, this is okay. We can normalize it. You can have control again in your life. I guess another thing that came to me early on was I had a choice. I could choose to be a victim. I could let this like rule and ruin my life. I could choose to make it tragic, or I could kind of choose to take control of the situation and allow it to be part of my life. So, just like any other kind of event that happens, it just becomes a little bit of who you are, but it doesn't really define you. So, yeah, I chose that, it was just a really bad day at work. I'm lucky. I have great coworkers. I had a great support network, and I'm going to do everything I can to just make this kind of as normal as possible.
You talk about being there in the moment that day, and realizing that you sort of wanted to take control of something like that. How aware were you of all that was going on around you in that moment? With people up on the hill trying to set the landing zone, and then with you down in the bush, and others who were, watching for the cougar that might be nearby. How aware were you in that moment to be able to take that sort of control mentally?
Well, epinephrine is an amazing drug. It kind of just numbs the pain and like really allowed me to be present in the situation. So like you could hear the cougar close by coming around, or you could hear the sticks break. Kind of knew everything that was happening around me, and like hear all my coworkers that were working really great together, coming down, bringing supplies, going back up, watching out for themselves. So yeah, like pretty aware during what was happening. At the same time, like I think I was pretty aware, but I can't fully. I wasn't mentally fully there too, so I might not be as aware as I thought I was.
Kelly Holt mentioned to us that the piece that stuck with her all these years later, still to this day, that you looked up at her and you asked her if you were going to die. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Like at that point, I thought my skull was shattered because there was a lot of popping and cracking noise as the cougar was chewing on my head. I do have to say, Kelly had the nicest smile when she came. She gave me a big smile looking down at me, and that made me feel better and reassured. But yeah, like I have never had my head inside a large predator before, so I really didn't know if I was going to survive or not. I just didn't want to die in front of my coworkers out on the in the cut block. But yeah, no, it was reassuring, and it was great, like just seeing that smiling face, and also knowing that there's a great team there that's going to get you out of this horrible situation. Because like really, it was a nightmare. It was dark out. There was a cougar that kept coming, trying to finish eating me. We're really far away from any civilization. And yeah, just like being removed from that nightmare. Like when I got to the hospital, and after I got out of the emergency and I was just in a hospital bed, like flashbacks became something that anytime I was alone or closed my eyes, I just see the cougar pouncing and biting my head, chewing on me. So again, like when I was in the hospital, I realized that I needed to give myself a way out from the flashbacks. So like as I was like living them, I'd be like, "Oh, I should email this person and thank them for kicking the cougar off my back," or I should email this person and yeah, thank them for something. Or even just like the idea of like applying for awards for people. It was kind of like a way that I could get out of the circle of flashbacks, just kind of give yourself an out. So you didn't have to keep reliving it. You could turn like a negative into a positive. I can't say what I did would work for anyone else. I grew up lucky. I had a very supporting family that was there, and I had a good support network in Grand Prairie. Another thing was I was very open with my story to my family and friends. I feel sorry for them. Like I guess words have power, and then once a story is out there, it becomes less scary. It's like no longer kind of trapped inside you, and you're not continuously reliving it. So My poor family and friends, as well as I did see a counselor for a bit after that. They were stuck listening to me constantly retelling the story. And every time I told it, it became like a little less scary, a little bit more normal. So like I'd have to say for me talking about it was like a really good approach to recovery. No longer becomes like a burden that you have to carry yourself. Because like it to me it seems pretty easy to, even though I was being mauled by a cougar, to allow that to be something that you become embarrassed about, or you can always find reasons to be embarrassed. Like my head looked like a soccer ball. But like just talking about it, you kind of share the burden. You don't live through it yourself, and it just normalizes everything.
I was really struck by when you said that you were really concerned about your coworkers and your family and friends and Josh and everyone else, and I think that's a pretty special quality that you have.
No, like I think probably everyone would think about people that they care about when something like this is happening to you. You know it's happening to you, but you really feel for, like, when you're the victim, it's kind of easier to be the victim than to be the bystander watching and unable to help. Or at least that's how I feel.
Well, that's interesting you say that because when we talked to Jenny, she said in the moment it seemed like you were doing a lot of looking after yourself. That the other people were trying to. She said she had a higher level of first aid training than we did. She was kind of telling us what might be the situation, the cracked skull perhaps, and you know. Jenny did mention that you were sort of trying to help yourself even in that moment. And it's a remarkable thing to hear you talk about that and to know that you felt that in the moment and just being cognizant of those around you and trying to pitch in even though you were the one they were trying to help.
Yeah, well, like really, I couldn't imagine being a first responder and having to deal with accidents every day and seeing what happens. And yeah, I couldn't imagine that job. It's so important. It's so much easier to be the victim.
Being married to a pilot at Stars who regularly attends difficult situations, I'm wondering what does your experience do in terms of providing perspective on what Josh sees and what first responders see?
Like they definitely can see the worst. We have much different ways of dealing with stuff. He likes things more compartmentalized and separated, and I kind of, I guess, adapt it more into my everyday life. But that being said, he sees things on a regular basis, and I just had a really bad day at work that happened once. But yeah, like it gives you sympathy and understanding for what they have to deal with and how that can take a toll.
Yeah, there's no question that these people are pretty special. They have some pretty amazing qualities, and yeah, we are also very lucky to have them. Particularly, something Russell said. Actually, a few people said it, but I love how Russell said to us that he felt that it was an honor to be on your mission and care for you. Did you ever
Oh,
hear
that's so
that?
nice. I definitely felt it was an honor to be picked up by them and cared for them, because you knew that you were getting the best care and you were getting out of that situation.
Mission Ready will be right back.
I'm Summer Hashem, Director of Technology at STARS. We absolutely enjoy working with WBM Technologies. They have a well-established process for client engagement, which really drives innovation and project success. As a technology partner, they understand our needs and goals and work to design effective solutions that are right for us. Like WBM, STARS has deep roots in the communities we serve across Western Canada. You could say we have a shared goal of being ready and available when people need us the most.
And now back to the show.
So I just want to switch gears just a little bit. Just speaking of people who were there for you, do you recall maybe months later or weeks later or whenever you were more recovered? Did you ever go back to the base or show up at the base or see any of the folks that might have been involved in the call, other than in the hospital?
Yeah, I've gone to the base. I've seen most of them many times. Like, I guess one of the worst things you can do for anxiety, because after the accident, I suffered a bit of PTSD and then anxiety and acute stress reaction, and now I'm good. One of the things you could worst things you can do is do what makes it go away. So, like, knew I needed to go out and push myself. So, like at the start, that could just be going to the base and seeing the helicopter again, because being inside the helicopter could be triggering. I guess it was about a year later, I went back to the accident site with one of the officers. Maybe it wasn't quite a year later, half a year, and walked him through what had happened, just to give him a better understanding of what happened, and to help them in future investigations they have. Like it could be things like just making myself go camping or go for a walk in the forest by myself. That was a bit stressful, but I knew I could, by doing it, it would help me in the long run.
Marcy, whose idea was it to go back out to the site? Was that yours?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see it. Go back out there in the daytime when it's less scary and intimidating. The site was in one of my favorite watersheds to work in. It's a beautiful place. There's beautiful views and very interesting topography and stuff around that area. So yeah, like it was a place I loved going, so wanted to go back to it.
So you were okay? What was that like?
Um, yeah, like I guess I had talked about the story enough times that it was pretty normal. I knew I was there with an officer who I could trust. The office I worked in had the fish and wildlife officers as well as biologists. And he had been there all along doing my investigation, asking me questions. So again, it was like more of a support network that I was lucky to have. Um, the story, I guess, hits close to home in a lot of ways with, a husband who worked for or who works for stars, the officers in my office that are doing the investigation on my mauling, all my coworkers that were out there. So yeah, like it, I guess I was kind of surrounded. I was really lucky. Like I had a great job. I had amazing coworkers. We had fun together when we were in the field, and like it's not that often that you work with people that will run at a cougar when your head is in its mouth and kick it off your back and fight it and keep it away, because the cougar wasn't small. The officers estimated from the, I guess, teeth indentations in my skull and also its tracks that it was between 175 and 190 pounds. So it was a very large animal. Yeah, so like amazing coworkers that are willing to risk everything to save you. And like, you can count on them for anything you need. So from that to then have stars show up, I was lucky and knew a bunch of them from before. And you're just getting amazing care. They're highly trained, they know what they're doing. Just like the looks on their faces can be so reassuring and just make you feel like, okay, I'm gonna get through this. This is gonna be all right. To then going to the hospital and having Marla, one of the STARS nurses, come in and help look after me. From then on, it was just continuous support. My office was pretty much only across the street from the hospital, so I could have a lot of visitors from work come through. And yeah, then getting out, and I grew up with a really close family, so having my family there, I guess there were things that maybe some people would find odd, but I began looking up cougar mauling stories online to kind of normalize it. And then I would make my mom read them to me, which, like, when I was a little kid, my mom would read me stories, and, they were always happy stories. So by making her read me stories of other people being mauled, it kind of just made it like, oh, yeah, this is a normal thing. This isn't so far out there. Because, like, for me, it was important to normalize the situation.
How did your mom deal with reading these stories to you? That's interesting.
She was willing to do it because I wanted it done. So
Well, and now you weren't a mom at the time, but now you are to,
Yeah, now I
two
have a
littles,
new
and now you get it.
yeah, new appreciation of the importance to reading to kids when they're little.
And speaking of
How
littles, we've heard from Marla's perspective about the naming of baby Marla, but I want to hear from your perspective how your daughter was named.
Oh, so Josh woke up one morning or maybe it was the middle of the night, and he's like, I have the perfect name. We need to name her Marla after Marla. So it's a good thing she was a girl because we only had one name.
and so right away did you agree? Yeah, that's a perfect name, Josh.
Yeah, I like the name Marla. I think it's a beautiful name, and Marla was really there when we needed her.
Does she know about how she got her name?
she she calls her Big Marla, so she's met Marla before, and she's Little Marla. I would say she has an idea. Yeah, she knows what happened to me in, like, I guess, an age appropriate way. But
So, what would you say to the allies out there, the support network that makes stars possible, the donors, the people who pitch in their time with volunteering, just the people that essentially make it run? What do you say to them?
oh well, a huge thank you. Like, that was one thing that I did think a lot about during my recovery. That without all of the donors, allies, stars support network, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I'm at. My mental health would be nowhere near as good, even if I did survive the rest of the cougar attack and making it out of the bush in a very long ambulance ride. I haven't met these people. There's too many of them, but you feel like there's a support network and people out there that care about you, even though you don't know them, and you can care about them. And they really, really were there when I needed them to be there through stars. Like, you always feel like you'll be a part of that family, and you know that the family's huge with all of the people that they've helped across, well, Alberta and now Western Canada, and that you're being cared for not just by the great team, but by everyone who supports them.
Just jumping backward in our conversation a little bit, again, casting a bit of a wider net. We talk about mental health, and you talked about your strategies to go on your mental health journey, and other people talked about theirs. From your perspective, as someone who did have to go through a pretty major mental health journey, what would you say? What is the importance of mental health and looking after one's mental health from your perspective?
Like, it's super important, without taking time for yourself. And, like, for me, it was a lot of doing kind of what I felt would help me. For other people, it might be going to counseling. But by doing that, it can really help you be who you were again. Like, for a while, it felt like stuff would never be quite normal again. It was kind of like a new normal you had to accept. But, like, I've moved on to a point where the new normal just kind of seems normal, and it's pretty similar to my life. If I didn't take time to look after myself, or if I avoided pushing myself or getting into uncomfortable situations, I would probably be a very miserable, scared person today.
Speaking of uncomfortable situations, you've brought this up to us before. I know Josh has brought it up to us before, and it almost seems like it's not even real. But you've run into cougars and had cougar encounters since your the mauling, as you call it.
Yeah, like, at that point, I'd worked about 10 years in northern Alberta and northern Saskatchewan doing field work. And, like, bears were just like a normal part of the job. I'd been stalked by bears before, had to have a helicopter come and try and chase it off, one that was trying to get us for its dinner, I guess, before could get airlifted out of there. But I had never seen a cougar. I, like, heard of them. I shared an office with a cougar biologist, but, like, again, I'd never seen them, so they never really seemed like a real danger or threat to me. So yeah, like, after my mauling, about 4 or 5 months later, we lived in the country in Grand Prairie. One of our neighbor's dogs was eaten by a cougar, and then a warning of cougar signs started showing up at our rural mailbox. And Then one night, it was about 10:15, so around the time my accident happened. We'd built a log house in the country, and we'd just put our dog out to go to the washroom before bed. As we put it outside, we realized there was a cougar sitting right there on our deck. So Josh ran outside because our dog took off after the cougar, and I didn't realize the cougar was there. So I ran outside to the other side of the deck just in time for the cougar to circle around our house and run by me about a meter away. And then first day I went back in the field, there were fresh cougar tracks around our vehicle. I guess in the 2 years following my accident, I saw 7 cougars until I moved to Calgary. I kind of wanted to move here just for a break from constantly being exposed to them, and also, like, at my work, if there was ever a problem cougar, the calls would come in, so I was constantly hearing about, problem animals, and it's kind of difficult to not be hyper aware when it's just kind of becomes something that is like a daily or weekly occurrence. I guess one thing on journey of mental health, there were, I guess, things that I wish I realized before, and I would have done differently. Like it's really important to take time for yourself. When my accident happened, I was 2 months into a master's, and I had a month break that just kind of lined up at that time. So I took the rest of the month off and then went back into my master's. I also wanted like things to be normal, so maybe I pretended that everything was a bit more normal, so I went back to work really early. So yeah, trying to balance work, a master's, and also mentally look after myself was difficult. So if anyone is ever going through a journey like this, it's really important to maybe just focus on your mental health and not burn yourself out doing everything else. Everything else in life can wait. What's most important is you.
You said you went back to work pretty soon after the incident. How soon was that?
I think it was close to a month. So, like at that point, it's not only just dealing with mental health issues, but like I was having severe vertigo from it. So I was trying to, I guess, hide it at work by like walking down the hallway and dragging my hand against the wall to try and make it look like I could walk normal, or just kind of like forgetting things. And it was a learning learning opportunity that way.
So glad that you recognized all of those signs. And so I was just thinking,
Yeah.
you talked about your master's. So it's been I think this August will be 8 years. What are the significant milestones that you've passed since surviving this?
Um, so like milestones would be going back to work, finishing my master's on time. Like the first time I went camping by myself again without Josh, that was kind of like a big step. And like at first, I would be camping, and it might be 3 nights before I could finally sleep through the night. But I kept doing it to eventually be able to do something I loved again. I did have the opportunity to see problem cougars through my work, so going and getting up close to the cougars and seeing them to be like, okay, this is kind of how they work. It's okay. Going back to the site where I was mauled was a big one, and then like a couple years ago, talking to the Fish and Wildlife officers when they were doing their mauling training about what had happened to me in my experience. Soon after the accident, the gala in Grand Prairie, I ended up talking about my accident there. So that was kind of like a big a big event. Yeah, I don't know, there's been a lot of them that now it's just a part of my life and just kind of a normal thing.
Well, thank you, Marcy, for sharing your story and helping the pod sphere, let's say, understand a little bit more about stars, because I think there's a lot of people who are going to gain a lot of insight about what stars offers and what the network that surrounds stars offers to people who are in situations like yours. And so you sharing your story goes a long, long way. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So that's it. That's a wrap on our inaugural season of Mission Ready, presented by WBM Technologies. We really hope you liked it. It was rewarding to put it together, to say the least. Remember, we are putting out a bonus episode, so watch for that very soon in your podcast feeds. Meanwhile, we're going to get started on the next season, so watch for that too. We also want to give a shout out to Kaya Gamble, who wrote the original theme music you hear throughout most of Mission Ready. She's actually the daughter of one of our longtime former pilots, very talented, and she can be found at kayagamble.com. That's Kaiya Gamble.com.
I love that connection. That's so special. If you have any questions about any of the information you've heard over the past season, I know that we've thrown a lot at you. Feel free to reach out to me, Deborah Tetley.
Or me, Lyle Aspinall.
At info@stars.ca, and we would be thrilled to answer your questions. And I guess I would just say to our patients who are out there listening, and you feel like it's time for you to share your story, feel free to reach out to us at vip@stars.ca, and we can get the ball rolling on potentially meeting some of your crew members, visiting the base, and just getting to know you a little bit. So as you know, STARS is a charity, and we rely on support from the public so that we can be there for the next patient who needs us, like we were for Marcy that day. So if you'd like to join our fight for life, or donate, or help us be there for the next patient who needs us, please visit stars.ca. We are just so grateful to everyone who spoke to us over this past season, hey Lyle, and I don't know about you, but I can't wait to do this all again.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody out there, if you enjoyed it, please spread the word, get other people to listen, and subscribe wherever you found it. Until next time, thanks for listening.